evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the City of Geneva's City Council Chamber for tonight's City Council meeting and Committee of the Whole meeting. The City Council meeting is called to order, and I kindly ask our City Clerk to please take the roll call.
Bruno.
Bruno here.
Burkhart.
Here.
Ruby.
Here.
Caben.
Here.
Gilbert.
Here.
Kasrag.
Here.
Malaja.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
Mayor.
Here.
Swanson.
Here. We have a lot of wonderful people in the audience tonight, but two of my favorite people are from Geneva Community High School, Miss Meister and Miss Andersetti, who are here tonight to talk to us about Red Ribbon Week. And I've asked them, and they have graciously accepted to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll follow your lead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both very much. Ms. Meister and Ms. Andersetti, before you take the floor, I would like to announce that there's been a slight change of programming this evening. So if I may, I'd like to turn the floor over to, I'm not certain whom, but somebody from Crow Holdings regarding the decision just made that they would like to share with this council and with the community.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, Peter Bezos here, attorney for the petitioner Crow Holdings. We would request that the public hearing, as well as the other agenda items concerning the related ordinances 12B through E, all be continued until next Monday night's City Council meeting.
There is a recommendation from Crow Holdings to continue consideration of their items on the agenda, which are, of course, 12B, C, D, and E, and including, under public hearing special items and presentations, item 3D, the public hearing on the execution of an annexation agreement. Does anyone object? The council level. Alderman Kilberg, sir.
I think it's a disservice to the residents that have come out here this evening to engage in this discussion, and asking them to come back for another meeting next week, I think, is unfair. I think if, in fact, they'd wanted an extension, why couldn't they notified the city staff and the council previously to 3 minutes after 7?
Well, the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, any petitioner has the right to request that their matter be continued. I was advised by Crow Holdings at approximately 6:40 this evening that it's likely they will be making that request. That huddle in the back room was to confirm, in fact, that they wanted to make that request formally.
I still think it's a disservice to the public.
Anyone else? Alderwoman Ruby, excuse me.
Thank you. Do we get to vote on this, or I do not support this either. I think it's very unfair to everybody in this room and those at home who I've had conversations with who are losing sleep at night, worried about what's going to happen. We need to discuss this. We're ready to discuss this.
Mr. Sandak, sir. The question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, obviously, I understand both council members' opinion, and they certainly are valid. A petitioner, however, has a right to seek to continue a matter before this tribunal. I think that right is unfettered if they do not wish to proceed at this time.
To Alderwoman Ruby's specific comment with respect to whether or not that recommendation, that suggestion, that request requires a vote of this council?
If the petitioner isn't moving forward, it does not require a vote. Certainly, I mean, there are valid objections.
We can record the objections.
But they have that right.
Mr. Chair, could we have a clarification on the code or the ordinance within the city's code and ordinances that would allow the petition to extend in this manner?
I can certainly opine on that without a great deal of specificity. I would certainly turn to Mr. Sandak or Mr. Finson as well. But I will say this, much to the displeasure of a lot of folks gathered here tonight, the reality is this. If a petitioner wishes to withdraw and/or postpone consideration of a matter, as Mr. Sandak indicated, they have that right to do so, without explanation, quite frankly. We have experienced this before, where items have been placed on an agenda, and we've received calls from either the petitioner or others who have chosen to withdraw or continue for whether it be illness, whether it be inconvenience, whether it be additional information they're trying to gather, whether it be trying to prepare from additional materials that are submitted, you name it. So I recognize and I acknowledge it's awkward and uncomfortable, but
I'm still asking for the citation or how.
I am trying to get that to you as Mr. Sandak is
Okay,
doing the
fine.
research, so.
I appreciate
I will
that.
note the objections. The objections are so far stated by Alderwoman Ruby and Alderman Kilberg. Mr. Finson is doing the research as well.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a suggestion that we recess for 10 minutes while we examine the issue and come back?
Does anyone object to recessing for a few minutes until this material can be provided? Recognizing, of course, that if there's not clarity with respect to language within an ordinance, there's mutual understanding that a petitioner can, if he or she chooses, continue or ask for a continuance at any time. Alderwoman Ruby?
I don't have a strong opinion on the recess. I just wanted to add one more comment.
Sure.
About the process. I feel it's very disingenuous to all of our citizens to allow one side an extension that they would never have been granted under any circumstances. And Alderman Kilberg and I are fighting to show transparency in government and show people this process of democracy working. And it went through the Plan Commission as planned. We've checked off that box. Now we're at step 2. And to throw this bone out there is, I think, completely unacceptable. And I think the city of Geneva it sheds a very negative light on us if we do this.
Anyone object to recessing until the materials can be properly researched by our city attorneys? I sense no objection from the dais. We are now in recess. The microphones will be turned off. Mr. Collins, I invite you to turn the cameras off as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back in open session. We are going to continue on with the meeting while our attorneys review the item as requested by Alderman Kilberg to provide direct either statutory or ordinance language. With that, Ms. Meister and Ms. Andrusetti, forgive me for the interruption and welcome back.
No problem. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. We know there's more pressing matters, so we'll only take a moment. My name is Ashley Andrusetti,
And I'm Lisa Meister.
and we would like to thank you all for allowing us the time at their meeting to recognize the importance of Red Ribbon Week. The entire nation celebrates this week each year to send a message to the community about taking responsibility for the health and making mature decisions regarding substance abuse. The Red Ribbon Committee aims to help children and teens build strong assets to stay on the right track and away from substances. We know there is a lot of pressure on teens to fit in with different crowds, and much of that pressure placed on them by their own perspective of what normal behavior looks like. The Red Ribbon Committee and the SAD Club try to send a different message to teens to let them know what the real norm is. that not many teams are out there using drugs on the weekends. Most teams spend their time with families and friends in a safe way and act on as positive role models for younger children in the community. The COVID pandemic has had detrimental impact on individuals with regards to drug addiction. More incidents of drug abuse have been reported as people feel afraid, isolated, and financially stressed. Now, more than ever, we need to help support each other and promote strength in asking for help for those with addiction problems. We also need to promote asset building in teams and help prevent experimenting and social drug use. Statistics show that teens that have more involved in their community, have a sense of belonging and stability, are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. In trying to make an impactful campaign with students, we highlight the 6 principles that help facilitate a drug-free lifestyle. These principles are: 1. Finding a natural high that is your passion. 2. Surrounding yourself with positive peer influences. 3. Finding a positive mentor to encourage you. 4. Having a firm belief in your talent and abilities. 5. Setting goals for your future. And 6. Building resilience to help get through the challenges of life. This year's theme is Drug-Free Looks Like Me. To me, Red Ribbon Week is encouraging your friends, family, and community to continue to make smart, healthy choices. It is important to acknowledge the pressure our society puts on us, but most important, to be brave together by fighting unhealthy decisions and making wise choices.
At the high school level, we are helping students build assets where they give back to their community through our annual food drive. We're also working with our GTV students to promote healthy decision-making and being brave in standing up to peer pressure. We are putting out a notice to parents to inform them of the ways they can safely discard leftover medications, such as through the drop box at the Geneva Police Department or local CVS or Walgreens stores where medications are collected and incinerated. Get the extra medications that are likely to be abused out of our houses. The sheriff's office is actually collecting discarded medications from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on October 23rd as part of a National Drug Take-Back Day. According to John Sunt, who is the founder of naturalhigh.org, teenagers are at an important phase where they are trying to figure out life on their own, preparing for a time when they will be responsible for themselves. They are trying to figure out how to navigate in their world and enjoy new freedoms. But yet, since their brains are not fully developed, they lack the context, life experience, and ability to see how their current choices will affect them in the future. They don't know how to match their freedom with responsibility. For that reason, they need the adults in their world to help pump the brake while they are pushing on the gas pedal and set up guardrails and boundaries to keep them on the road. We know that dynamic is an uncomfortable time for teens and for parents alike. But making mistakes is a key part of growing up, and kids learn to make better decisions by experiencing consequences. What we do know is that kids who delay their first drink of alcohol until past their 18th birthday will have an infinitely higher likelihood of avoiding a lifelong struggle with alcohol. We know that most addiction problems start during the teenage years. We know the teenage brain will get permanently altered to crave more and more risky behaviors if they indulge in substance abuse and the subsequent dopamine rush their brains enjoy. We know that teens are hypersensitive to what their perception is of their friends' behaviors, and they grossly overestimate how many of their peers use drugs, including alcohol. At the same time, teens underestimate how harmful substances like marijuana or prescription painkillers are. As a community, we can make an impact by providing fun, healthy things to do through our park district programs, our city planning, and our school district extracurricular plans so that teens can have safe and fun activities to participate in with their friends that allow for adult supervision and guidance. As parents, we encourage you to talk about healthy decision-making under pressure within your own families and encourage an open dialogue with your kids. We thank you for your time and attention to this important annual week of drug prevention and awareness.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to so proclaim October 23rd through the 31st, 2021 as Red Ribbon Week in the city of Geneva. Alderman Marks makes the motion. Alderwoman Burkhart makes the second. Before we take a formal vote, how are we doing?
I think that for the most part, most of our teens are doing the healthy things.
Of
You know,
course, yeah.
they are enjoying time with their friends and their families in ways that are, you know, incorporating healthy choices. I think that sometimes when we have dips like the COVID pandemic and we have a lot of like unsupervised time, we have a lot of isolation, I think that sometimes that contributes to some of the curiosity and some of the risk-taking behaviors. And so I think that sometimes, you know, we're experiencing, you know, kind of a surge of some of these things. But it's not to the degree that kids think it is. You know, a lot of times kids think that 80 or 90% of their peers are doing these kinds of things on the weekends, and it's really a much lower percentage, like in the 20s or 30s. But their perception is their reality. And so they make their choices based on what they think the norm is. And so that's one of the things that Ashley and I are trying to do is to teach the kids in the building and in the community that that's not what the norm is.
Very good. Same feelings?
Exactly, same. She couldn't have said it better.
Anyone from the dais, any comments or questions for, yes, Alderwoman Burkhart?
Thank you. Thanks, ladies, for being here tonight, and as the mother of a 13-year-old, giving me lots to think about, and I can't believe I'm at that stage, but I am. Are there any things you see, programs that cities do or schools do that seem to work? I recently saw an interesting thing out of Iceland where the government kind of funded like programs in art and music and sports and helped kids find that natural high, and they saw drug and alcohol abuse like plummet when they, you know, it was state funded and it was all free and stuff. But so I think that's really intriguing. I mean, I've always believed that kids who are busy and engaged and have a lot of different kind of safety nets that often can help. But what else is working, especially, you know, during this pandemic?
Yeah, I think along the same lines of what you're talking about, like where city programming can work with Park District, you know, to talk about activities that they can build for the weekends for kids to have things to do in the city that are not, you know, hiding in a friend's basement and, you know, partaking in negative choices. But the more kinds of things that we can do as a city to offer different options to students and creative options and outlets, I think is going to be better for them. And I know that, you know, some cities do things like skate parks and some cities do things, you know, where students have a lot more, not necessarily a lot more than Geneva, I'm just saying, you know, different kinds of options, whether that's, you know, recreational basketball, whether that's, you know, utilizing different facilities in schools during off hours where there's supervision there to help students have some adults that are helping to set up some guardrails. I think there's a lot of different ideas that we can talk about.
Very good.
Set up together.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have a motion and we have a second to proclaim October 21st through the, 23rd through the 31st as Red Ribbon Week in the city of Geneva. A voice vote would be sufficient. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Bruno, aye.
Congratulations. And thank you again for your flexibility. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to take up so much time on such a pressing
Oh,
night
it's all
for you
good.
guys. Thank you.
Now, here's something the students and all of us can do. Our next item of business, item 3B, is to consider approval of a special event application for the Ulala Chocolate Run on November 7, 2021.
Bruno, so moved.
Ooh, a motion by Kasserag, seconded by Bruno. I don't know if Kathleen is with us this evening. I don't think so. It's pretty, is she? Yes. Okay. Hi, Kathleen, anything else you'd like to add about the Ulala Chocolate Run on November 7th? Okay, any questions or comments from the dais? This is a huge event. It just grows every year. It's amazing. And if you're not familiar with it, after the race, you get free hot chocolate at All Chocolate Kitchen, which is nice. Even if you jump in 3 miles into the race, you can still do that. So. The last block will do it, man. Then you get hot chocolate from the Shell station. So it's like... We have a motion, we have a second, a voice vote is sufficient. All in favor of approving the special event application for the Ulala Chocolate Run for November 7, 2021, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Bruno, I.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Our next item, item 3C, is a presentation on Geneva Police and Firefighters Pension Actuarial Reports. I know this is why most people are here tonight, so we will enjoy the actuarial presentation. We have our Finance Director, Rita Cruz.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Franken from Foster & Foster is here tonight to present the actuarial evaluations for the Geneva Police and Firefighter Pension Funds. These reports are given to the city and the pension funds with important information regarding returns on the funds, long-term liabilities, and the recommended contributions for the city for the prospective funds for fiscal year 2023. Here is Mr. Franken to speak more about the specifics on each fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Franken.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing this evening?
Good. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm not used to such a large crowd for my actuarial presentation. If, I know we're in the process of doing some research, just give me the sign and I will talk for as long as you want me to. So,
Yeah, well,
so as you mentioned, we're here to talk about the Geneva Police and Fire pension plans. And the good news is that the returns for the year were phenomenal. With COVID last March, when the pandemic first hit, the markets tanked, and both your plans really suffered in last fiscal year. The fire return for the year last year was about almost negative 8%, and the police plan wasn't as bad, but the return was negative as well. The good news is that the market recovered fairly dramatically during your fiscal year that ended on April 30th, 2021, and the return for your fire pension plan for the year was over 33%, and 28% for your police fund. So that's the good news. The bad news is that you don't get to take credit for all of that immediately because of the investment smoothing that occurs. Just like you didn't have to take the entire hit immediately last year, because you spread it out over a 5-year period, you recognize that gain this year over a 5-year period as well. But the good news is that the returns were really strong. We have unrecognized investment gains that are going to help us in the future. So that's good news. The other thing that has occurred during the year is after several discussions that we've had, we've made some updates to the assumptions. The biggest one is that we lowered our investment return assumption from 7.25% down to 7%. We think that is more in line with the long-term expectation. With that in mind, though, keep in mind that the plans are being consolidated. The assets are being consolidated into two funds. One, the Consolidated Police Fund, and the other, the Consolidated Fire Fund. That's where all of the downstate police and fire pension plans will be, they'll all be consolidated during the next year. So that investment authority will go to those funds. You'll remain with your own asset accounts, but your local pension boards will no longer control the investments. That will be done by the state board. So with I guess one other assumption change, we did change our payroll growth assumption, which determines how steep our pension ramp is. We lowered it from 4.25% down to 4%, with the expectation that we would lower it in future years. This again is done to be more in line with future expectations and those assumptions that we would expect the consolidated plan to have. So just quickly, just some key financial metrics. After the assumption changes, the fire pension fund, the contribution requirement increased by about $88,000 from $798,000 up to $885,000. And the fire contribution increased by about $60,000 from 1.71 to 1.77 million. So the contribution requirement did go up. Those increases were really attributable to the fact that we changed those the assumptions when we were calculating the liability and the contribution requirements. The funded ratio for each plan, increased. Well, I guess the fire plan remained constant over the years. It went from it started at 71.1% and it ended at 71.1. That again reflects the good experience that we had, but it also reflects the fact that we lowered our investment return assumption, so our liabilities went up. So even after making that change, we didn't see a decrease to the funded ratio. And on the police side, the funded ratio went from 57.3 up to 60%. The unfunded liability for the fire went from 6.7 million up to 7.2, and for police it went from 19.1 down to 18.9. So the unfunded liability for the fire plan, for the police plan, did go down a little bit. The last metric I want to talk about is regarding the GASB information. So that's the information that goes into your financial statements. The one thing that I want to point out is that there are differences in the calculations. What I've talked about so far has been based on the Illinois Pension Code. What goes into your financial statements is based on the rules put in place by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And so the one thing that really makes these calculations different is that GASB does not allow you to smooth your investment gains. So you have a very different funded ratio in GASB than you have based on the Illinois Pension Code this year because of those returns. I talked about the smoothing that goes on. Well, that doesn't happen in the GASB calculation. So when you have a year like you did, when you have returns of 30% or nearly 30% or more, you end up with two very different numbers. And for the police plan, I talked about the funded ratio being 60%. Well, on the GASB basis, it's 67%. So that 67 reflects all of that good news that we had this year, but we're not able to build in to our contribution calculations immediately. On the fire side, it's very similar. It's 71.1% based on the Illinois Pension Code, and nearly 77% on a GASB basis. So again, the only reason I want to point that out is that you just, one, to demonstrate how much different your funded ratios would be without that smoothing, and two, just to let everybody know that you might see different numbers when people are talking about your funded ratio. If it's the accountant or auditor, he's going to be talking about the GASB. If it's someone talking about how much money's going into the plan, they're going to reflect, they're going to talk about that lower number that is calculating with the smoothing. The smoothing, again, is really to even things out over time, but it does, in cases like, in years like this where we have significant returns, can really lead to divergent funded ratios. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from the dais from Mr. Franken? Alderman Swanson, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for adjusting the discount rate from 7.25% to 7%. That bothered me for years. It still seems like it's on the high side. And I guess a question going forward, after the consolidation of investments with the state funds, will the police and fire still be able to provide a recommended allocation of investments?
So the recommendation for allocation of assets is going to be determined by each fund's board. Each fund has a 9-member board that is comprised of, there's two active employees, a retiree or two, plus municipal representatives. So it's a 9-member board. Those are the people that will be setting the future asset allocations. So your local pension boards will not have control over the investments. They will not have any they will not make decisions on the asset allocation. The only decision that they will be making is how much money do they need to keep in the local account to be able to pay benefits when they come due. So like I said, the authority, investment authority, will going forward be with the consolidated boards.
Okay, and that answers my next question, and that's should the two pensions have the same discount rate, given they have very different allocations, but all of that's going to change after the consolidation?
Yes, yep. The asset allocation will determine the investment assumption for both of the plans. Currently, the fire plan has an investment policy. They have two investment policies. One is the interim policy, and two is sort of their ultimate or long-term policy. They feel it's going to take a while, several years, to get from the point where they are now, collecting the data, to getting into whatever investment vehicles that they want, and so they had an interim asset policy and a long-term one to sort of bridge that gap.
Okay. And my final question, for the last 3 years, for both plans, we had a 5% pay increase assumption. We upped both of the plans to 5.66% and 5 point something, yet both of them came in under. So I guess my question was, why did we increase those assumptions, and what changed that it didn't happen?
Yes, so what we've done is, back prior to, the old assumption was based, it was a flat 5%, so it assumed everybody got 5%. But we did change it from that flat 5% to a service-based table to be more reflective of what actually happens. So typically what we see is people that are newly hired, they earn larger increases, step increases, those types of things earlier in their career, and then as they progress, when there's no more step increases, they end up with cost of living type adjustments. So we did adopt a service-based table that starts 10 or 12% and grades down to 3.5. And so those 5.66 and whatever the other rate is really just a weighted average of the expectation based on the demographics of each plan. So we'd look at, this person has 0 years, we expect him to get 10%, but this guy has 30 years and is going to get 3%. And so that's what that's how that assumption is determined. We only have 1 year of experience, and it looks like the return or the increases were less in that 1 year. It's an assumption that we will monitor. And if we're always consistently lower than the assumption or consistently higher than an assumption, we would address those over time. One of the first step that each consolidated plan is taking is to do an experience study where they're going to create new actuarial tables that will be used in their valuations. So it's likely we will have some assumption changes or recommendations for you in the near future based on the results of those studies and the new tables that will be created by each of the funds.
Okay, thank you. Like you, I could go on for hours, but I think I'll end it there, so thank you.
You two take it outside. Alderwoman Burkhart.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. Can you go back? You said, what will the local pension boards remain responsible for after the consolidation? You said basically just determining the assets that needed in the short term. Is that right?
Well, so the local funds will still be responsible for administering the plans. So, for example, if there are disability hearings, they still are responsible for those. Doing the calculations to determine how much each person is due in retirement. They're still responsible for that. So they'll retain all of their current duties except for the investment piece of it. That will be outsourced, if you will, to the consolidated funds. Yep.
Anyone else from the dais for Mr. Franken? Alderman Kosarog.
Along those lines, will you continue to give us presentations each year, though, and updates? And Or does that come more in the form of a report from the state rather than?
That's a very good question, and I think in the short term, that you will continue to have an independent actuarial evaluation completed. The state, the consolidated funds will issue reports very similar to the reports that are currently provided by the Department of Insurance. And those reports do not provide all of the information that you need. One, it doesn't provide any GASB information, and two, it's based on the funding policy that's in the Illinois Pension Code, which is not the policy that you've adopted. So you won't receive what you need from the state in the short term. In the long term, there's an expectation, at least for me, that they will migrate towards providing each municipality with all of the information that you'll need. We work with a consolidated fund just like this in the state of Arizona, and that fund provides all of the actuarial information. But since the assets are the overwhelming priority for the investment funds, I think the actuarial evaluations are sort of much lower on the priority list. But I think that they will address that at some point in the future. But in the short term, I don't think anything changes for you guys.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else from the dais? Anything else you want to add, Mr. Franken?
Nope, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue on to the agenda, ladies and gentlemen. We're just skipping over the item 3D, as in David. Yes.
Can I get an update? Are the lawyers still working on?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
they are.
So I'm curious how long we're going to wait on a legal opinion?
Well, I think we would go through the agenda, and I just received a text from Ron saying they're narrowing it down, so I think it's best probably to wait as long as we absolutely have to, so that whatever decision is made is accurate and within the confines of our authority or not.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you. Amendments to the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, any amendments? The Omnibus agenda, item 5, is a routine item. All items marked with an asterisk are considered to be routine by this council and can be considered and voted upon with one motion. Is there such a motion? Alderman Swanson makes that motion. And Alderman Mayer makes the second. Any questions or comments regarding the Omnibus agenda? If not, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Bruno,
Bruno, aye.
Burkhart,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
Caven,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kasserag,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Item number 5, the omnibus agenda has been approved with a vote of 10 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and of course, 0 absent. Item 10, municipal bills for payment. We kindly ask our city clerk to read the bills in their aggregate for our consideration.
Total bills are $2,051,905.47.
Mayor, Bruno moves that we approve and pay the bills as read. The individual items that add up to that amount can be found on the city website in tonight's city council packet.
Alderman Bruno makes the motion to pay the bills as presented, which are also available in the city council members' packets and online. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Alderwoman Burghardt. Any questions, any comments? Mr. Clerk, whenever you're ready, sir.
Burkhart,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
Caven,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kasserag,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Swanson,
Aye.
Bruno.
Bruno, aye.
Item 10, the bills for payment have been approved with 10 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 0 absent. Item 12, folks, presentations of ordinances, resolutions, petitions, and bids. Item 12A, consider resolution number 2021-8080, restating and granting conditional site plan approval granted by Resolution 2020-21 for the construction of a mixed-use building containing 60 residential apartment units, 6,014 square feet of commercial space, and 63 off-street parking spaces at 609 South 3rd Street. Is there a motion? Motion by Alderman Maladra, seconded by Alderman Mayor. Let's see, is it David, I believe? Are you fielding the questions for this one? Mr. DeGroot, there you are, sorry. Any questions or comments for our Director of Community Development, Mr. DeGroot? And forgive me for not recognizing the applicant. Where are they? Ah, there we are. Any questions for either Mr. DeGroot or the applicant? Alderman Kilberg, sir.
I'd have a question for the applicant. Obviously, we received information in our packet, but I think it's helpful if you would share with the community. When you were here in December, I believe, of 2020?
It was August,
August,
yes.
excuse me. You'd indicated that you'd anticipated construction late fall of 2020 or early spring of 2021. Could you explain why you didn't commence with your construction plans, or why you left your site plan approval expire?
Primarily, it's been related to COVID, and it's been a twofold delay. The first that caused us to miss the fall of 2020 was IDOT approvals. We had to get a permit for the reuse of the access off First Street, and IDOT, with their COVID delays working remotely, they didn't get us through a permit that we started directly after that August meeting until the spring of 2021. That prevented us from completing our applications for permit here at the city, which is required to obtain financing. That timing was unfortunate because if you have watched the news, you've probably seen the lumber price escalations that happened in the spring, and it continued to be very volatile, which prevented the financing groups to commit during that kind of uncertainty about what would happen with the pricing. For example, at one point we were seeing the lumber price on our project going up $20,000 a week, and we could only hold that price for 5 days, which is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to finance under. We see that situation normalizing a bit, although there's still been some spikes in the last week on the lumber pricing and the futures, but we're hopeful that that'll normalize as the supply and demand start to come into equilibrium and allow us to move forward and get financing again.
I guess it surprises me that someone that's going to develop a size of this scale and scope, that you weren't monitoring this and understanding that this was going to expire, and now you're coming back and asking for this. We've had other examples of where people, I guess, have the best intentions in the world as it relates to a development, and they make requests to the council, and then there's delays, and we have developments in Geneva now that are approaching probably about 3 years, and they still aren't completed. Is there a reason why why this wasn't being more closely monitored by your team?
Is being monitored. I think I was in communication with David about a month ago about getting it back on the agenda. That's where we're at.
Now it's on our agenda again, but it didn't necessarily have to be on our agenda, is what I'm saying. But enough said. Thank you for coming this evening. I wish you would have came several months ago and asked for this, or indicate to the council what was happening as far as the things that you pointed out. We're all aware of COVID. We're all aware of construction costs. Maybe that explanation a little earlier in 2021 would have been helpful. Thank you, though, for being here tonight.
Thank you, noted.
Anyone else from the dais for either Mr. DeGroot or our applicant? Alderwoman Burkhart?
Thanks for being here. Has anything changed in terms of the market for demand for these kind of units? Do you have any concerns that, do you think that there'll still be demand for what
Actually,
you
demand
intend
for
to build?
suburban apartments has gone up, so that's a positive. The rental rates are generally been going up in the suburbs, So we've been able to adjust our models to adjust upward, which helps with the increased construction costs. So we're hopeful that that also helps now with the financing. That we can convince the folks that see now why it costs more. It'll generate an extra piece of income to offset that.
Remind me what you were envisioning for the commercial space?
We've been thinking that it would be nice, and we've talked with a couple brokers about finding, in essence, I would describe it as a nice, quick mart. Something that would be useful for the tenants who would be in the building to go down, stop, pick up, various things for, the household, or, and also then support the commuters that pass by it every day, who might grab, something on the way home, or on the way to work as well. So that's kind of what we're expecting.
Okay. And are you all set with IDOT in terms of what you needed from them?
Yeah, it just took them a very long time. They're slow in a good time, and they were very slow once COVID hit. And with no one watching over anyone, it was really hard to even talk to someone about where our project was in their process. It was a frustrating time.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Kasserag.
So, I understand what we're being asked, but I just want to ask this question. Is the scope of your project changed at all?
No.
It's still the exact same plans that went through PZC and that were approved here on the council?
Yeah, we're ready to pull a building permit the minute we can step forward with the financing. So we're ready to go. And the staff here has been superb. I have to just let you know, we've been very impressed with all the staff, and David in particular has been very helpful shepherding us through the process. So.
I don't know if you saw this article, but apparently we're the coffee capital. So you might want to consider a coffee shop for the commercial space too. At our 15th coffee shop. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being
It
here.
might be.
Anyone else from the dais? Alderman Mayor?
You mentioned wood prices quite a bit. I'm in construction as well, and I know that it's hitting all the different materials, but since you mentioned wood, I have to ask, is this an all-wood frame building?
Yeah, so the upper floors are wood on a precast concrete ground floor.
Are you going to be sprinkling the building?
Yes, it's fully
Oh,
sprinkled.
great.
Anyone else from the dais? We have a motion, I believe from Alderman Maladra, a second by Alderman Mayer. A voice vote is sufficient, but just for the fun of it, let's take the roll. Mr. Clerk, whenever you're ready.
Ruby.
Aye.
Caven.
Aye.
Kilberg.
Aye.
Kasserag.
Aye.
Maladra.
Aye.
Marks.
Aye.
Mayor.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Bruno.
Bruno, aye.
Burkhart.
Aye.
Item 12A passes with 10 affirmative votes, 0 no votes, and 0 council members absent. We're going to ask for a quick update here from the Assistant City Administrator, Mr. McCready.
I believe the attorneys are going to be joining us in just a moment.
In just a moment, okay. If any council member feel it's best to entertain a motion to recess, certainly happy to entertain that motion. Motion by Alderman Mayer, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Kasserag. Simple majority requires, which should have been done before as well. Roll call vote to recess until such time as the city attorneys are prepared to present the information and their findings.
Bruno.
Bruno, aye.
Burkhart.
Aye.
Ruby.
Aye.
Caven.
Aye.
Kilberg.
Aye.
Kasserag.
Aye.
Maladra.
Aye.
Marks.
Aye.
Mayor.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
The motion is passed unanimously. Ladies and gentlemen, the microphones will be turned off, the cameras will also be turned off, and we will be back, we hope, momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, the chair will entertain a motion to return to open session. Motion by Alderman Marks, seconded by Alderman Swanson. A voice vote is sufficient to return to open session. All in favor of doing so, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Bruno, so, aye.
Anyone against? We are back in open session, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate very much your patience, your indulgence, and I'm going to turn it over to the City Attorney, Mr. Finson, to provide to all of you an explanation of what transpired and what will transpire based on that said explanation.
So, this is something that, at least according to one of the city attorneys, Chuck Radovich, who's actually the city attorney, we called Chuck because Chuck's been around longer than most of us have been alive. He's probably watching, so that he'll appreciate the dig. But Chuck's been, I think he's been involved for 39 years, so since the 70s, I think. And what he said is that historically, we have always, if a petitioner has asked for time, we have given the petitioner time. We haven't forced them to go forward. And that has been the practice of the council. That said, it is the meeting is the council's meeting. And so we are interpreting that what went down, what is happening here, and we'll try to explain this through Robert's Rules of Order. We did not find any authority that says that the hearing can be, that the petitioner has standing to request the hearing. They can request that it be continued, but they can unilaterally continue it. So what I perceive as happening here, what the three of us perceive as happening, is that the chair has made a ruling based on what the city has historically done, saying that the petitioner can request this and that it would be granted. Alderman Kilberg. Thank you. I've only known you for too long. Alderman Kilberg raised a question about what was the authority. So we're interpreting that, if the alderman would like to refashion it, as an objection to the chair. I would challenge the ruling of the chair.
And so there would need to be let me finish and then you can do all that. So that there would be a second, thank you, Alderman Ruby. There would be a second. Then there will need to be a debate amongst the council as to whether or not that objection to the ruling of the chair should stand or not stand. And if it is, in order for it to be sustained, it requires a simple majority vote. Mr. Sandek, did I miss anything on that? We can't hear him, but he looks like he's saying no.
Sorry, I was muted. You have it exactly right.
So, I told you it was going to be one for the record. So, with that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
The chair recognizes the objection by Alderman Kilberg, recognizes the second by Alderwoman Ruby. This is now a debatable item. Those wishing to comment regarding this matter are free to do so. Simply request acknowledgement. Alderman Kilberg, sir.
I challenge the ruling of the chair since there's no precedent, and that I understand that we have recognized extensions in the past. I'm just saying that trying to or attempting to ask for an extension a few minutes before the beginning of a meeting, after the official agenda of the meeting has been posted, I think is a disservice to the public, and that the extension should not be granted on those grounds.
Anyone else? Alderwoman Ruby.
Thank you. I'd also like to add that the petitioner has had 11 days since the last PZC meeting to do this, and to make this request at this hour, I think is unacceptable.
Anyone else on the dais? Oh, excuse me, Alderman Bruno, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. While I appreciate the investment that everyone in the audience has made, if this is going to be convoluted now, it's going to be more convoluted if we don't step through this in as an organized fashion as possible. This will give the residents more time to present. This will give the petitioner more time to present. I would not support overriding the chair. Thanks.
Before I recognize Alderwoman Ruby for a second time, is there anyone who has not yet spoken on this matter wish to do so for the first time? Alderman Mayor.
So, I mean, there's been hundreds, is it fair to say hundreds of emails on this subject that I went through and read. I read a 651-page packet tonight over the course of the weekend and today. I did ask some questions, and because I submitted them at noon today, I didn't get all the answers yet. I felt rushed, to be honest. I mean, I'm being honest. I know that it's not what everybody in here wants to hear, but I'm an architect, and I had to look at all the plans, and there were a lot of plans, and there were some that were fuzzy, and there were some that weren't clear. I think that it's fair to continue it. I think that some of the emails today even said that they'd like a continuance. Now, it's unfair that the applicant gets to ask for that, and nobody listened to the people when they asked for it, but that's where we are. So I support moving it, to be honest. That's all.
From the dais, Alderwoman Burghardt.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been on the council 6 years. I can't remember a time when an applicant's asked for a continuance. I could be wrong. Or, a delay after the meeting started. I struggle with, we've had, I wish I could remember the vote. We had some vote that was almost mathematically impossible based on the amount of people that were here one night. We had a quorum, but whatever it was required a supermajority, and I think, why wouldn't the petitioner in that case have said, I'd like to kick this down the can, because, kick the can down the week, because maybe next week 9 or 10 of you will be here. I said, I think a lot of us forget before COVID, with COVID, none of us travel anymore. We're all here, we can call in, so 10 out of 10. Before, we used to have 1 or 2 aldermen who had missing, and so I think about if I was an applicant in that case, I'd think, well, gosh, the alderman who's in my favor, I know he's kind of a yes vote or something, he's not here tonight, I'm gonna continue this, and maybe that's just not something applicants knew they could do, and I guess if we grant this tonight, we'll have to keep that in mind, that, anytime an applicant can come before us and ask to delay it by 2 weeks or next month, they can look around and see who's favorable to them sitting up here on the dais. So I'm frustrated by the timing. If this had been at 9 a.m. this morning, 10 a.m. this morning, I would have understood that. But it's hard for all of us here who all run in here from work or, busy lives, all the people here who got babysitters and rushed to get here, and then, for that to come to us, at 7:02 or whatever. So my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Maladra, sir.
So I have a question. If we do continue this, and the applicant goes off and decides that somehow they want to change the proposal, what we entertain when we come back from the continuance will be the same proposal that we're going to entertain tonight, correct? Or can it be a modified proposal, and if it is modified, does it have to go back to square one?
No. The short answer is, David, if you could also take the podium to correct me, or Mr. Sandak or Mr. Finson. It's my understanding that should something like that occur, the placeholder to discuss any sort of changes, conditions, amendments, alterations is the public hearing on the annexation agreement, because the annexation agreement is so tied closely to the development proposal itself.
Yes, I guess it depends on what change would be proposed. If it's a change to the annexation agreement, that is what the public hearing tonight was to be held on. So that could occur, but changes to any of the documents that were presented before the Planning and Zoning Commission, I believe you would have to revert back to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, so I had a question about that too. The annexation agreement refers to a PUD, correct?
Correct.
Is that if that PUD, was that reviewed by the PZC?
It was, I guess,
So that underlying PUD that's part of the annexation agreement cannot change?
it depends on this hypothetical change, what that change
Yeah, I
is.
made one up, yeah, okay. I don't think they're asking for a continuance because they want to watch the White Sox. They don't start till Thursday.
Right. So I don't know what that is, if there is one. It really depends on the nature of any changes proposed, on whether or not that
So what
requires
I'm
to be
trying to
reverted back to the
understand
Planning
is,
and Zoning Commission.
so the question of delay has a, sort of a opposite end, which is the question of, are we rushing, are we moving too fast? Up until tonight, I have heard from numerous people that they felt this was rushed. But now it seems like we're trying to rush a decision to take a vote because somebody thinks that such a vote would be advantageous to them. Somebody else is maybe rushing to delay a vote because they think the delay would be advantageous. So what I'm trying to understand is how nefarious can a request for a delay be? I've been on the council a long time, as has Alderman Burkhardt, and one precedent we have set is we don't shy away from more conversation. And so it seems to me that this request for delay allows more conversation from the public, from the applicant, from the council. But that's also predicated on the thing that we're discussing being that very same thing that's already been through a PZC review. And if that's not going to be the case, then I don't think it's fair to go with the continuance. Sorry, that was long-winded and
From the dais, anyone who's, Alderman Kasserag, sir?
I also sympathize with everybody here and everybody watching and their frustrations, but I think that, or I hope that the reason that they want the delay is because they want to reconfigure the plan, not substantially, maybe as Craig is referring to, but in a way that might be more palatable to the community. And I certainly don't think that they're delaying so that they could make it less palatable for the community in any way. So I think that we should give them that opportunity to take in the feedback that they've gotten and that they probably will continue to get now. And I would vote to uphold the ruling of the chair because of that reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who has not yet spoken? Alderman Cavan, sir.
Thank you. I know we're talking about what potentially the change might be, and I think if I had more of those specifics or I had more information, which I'm certain can't be disclosed at this point in time, I probably could see the reason to, to maybe take that week-long break. But it's already 8:20, and I'm pretty confident with the number of people that are here that I'm going to be back here next Monday anyhow. So if people want to start sharing what their thoughts are and everything else, I would be okay with that continuing because I'm very confident that I'm going to be back here next Monday anyhow. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Those who have not yet spoken to the question on the floor, prior to recognizing Alderwoman Ruby for a second time, Alderman Maladra for a second time, now's your chance to chime in. Alderwoman Ruby,
Thank you, Mayor.
then Maladra.
So just a couple of points in response to things I've heard. The residents are not asking for more time. I don't know how I can be any more clear on that. The stress, the anxiety, the sleeplessness, all of these things are swallowing them whole, and me as well, I might add. This past month has been very intense, and we are ready to have this conversation and at least start this conversation. I think it's, once again, I think it's horrible that we extend this opportunity to one side And it is very unfair. It's not impartial. I feel that if we grant them their desire to push this meeting off, that is the opposite of impartial. I feel like we are showing favoritism to the prospective, to the client, or to the applicant. The other thing I find very ironic is that the applicant has been pushing and pushing for a vote at both PZC meetings for 8.5 hours. I can't count how many times I heard them say, "Can we vote?" They didn't want to answer questions. They didn't want to talk about things. They just wanted a vote. And now we're here and we're ready to discuss and we're ready to vote. And you're telling us that you're not ready. Well, I'm sorry. I do not agree with the idea that this is even a possibility. Finally, I just wanted to point out that next Monday is Indigenous Peoples Day, and a lot of our residents will be traveling, and we are doing them a disservice by not only shutting them down tonight, but by pushing this off to potentially pushing this off to a date where they are out of town. And I think that's all I can say. Thank you.
No, it's not.
No.
Alderman Maladra, sir, for a second time, since no one else wishes, at least that I can tell, who wishes to speak for the first time.
But it would be his second time too, so I'll go. If changes are made, David, this I guess is for you. So if changes are made, whatever they may be, how long before our next meeting do we find out what those changes are so that we can do our homework about them?
I don't know. I don't know the reason for the request for the delay. I don't know if there are significant changes being proposed, if they are to site plans, to terms in the agreement. I don't know.
Damn it,
I
Dave.
can't answer the question until we receive it. But, I mean, minimally, I would hope to have it out by the time we publish the agenda.
Yeah, so 48 hours theoretically.
Right.
Okay, and then I just want to make clear that if I were to vote for this continuance, it's not because I'm favoring the developer over the public. Thank you.
Alderman Bruno, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. To that point of changes, that's a good point as to what could be presented if indeed this this continuance is to consider other changes. I found it interesting in my one-on-one discussions with others on the council just how much thought and internal conflict, because there's a lot of good that can come out of a project like this, but obviously this is a very challenging development for that neighborhood. There are things that could be changed on this project that would make a huge difference. I don't know what they're planning on bringing, but I would rather discuss that future project, if indeed there's changes coming, than what's before us today. I think that's a disservice to the city. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak to the matter regarding the objection and second of the chair with respect to allowing the petitioner to continue this meeting? Very well. We have a motion, we have a second. A simple majority rules the day. Just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, if you are voting for the motion, which is to overrule the chair, you must vote aye. If you are voting to disagree with that motion, you vote nay. Any questions?
State that again, so.
If you support the motion to override the chair, you vote aye. Period. If you disagree with the motion and the seconder, you vote nay. to override the chair.
That still sounds wrong.
Okay.
Overrule you means you disagree.
To overrule the chair, you vote aye on the motion, because the motion was made that I object to the chair's decision to allow the petitioner to continue the meeting.
Okay. And a nay vote sustains your decision.
It stays the decision, exactly. Yeah. Or disagrees with the motioner, yes. No, and if there's a majority of people voting aye, that means that this meeting continues tonight. With the first item being the public hearing. Take a deep breath here. Whenever the clerk is ready.
Caven,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kasserag,
Aye.
Maladra, okay, Kasserag is nay. Thank you. Maladra,
Nay.
Marks,
Nay.
Mayor,
Nay.
Swanson,
Nay.
Bruno,
Bruno, nay.
Burkhart,
Aye.
Ruby.
Aye.
There's 5 ayes, ladies and gentlemen, there's 5 nays.
No.
No, 4.
Four ayes, excuse me, and 5 nays, right? Say it again, what's the final count?
4 ayes, 6 nays.
There you go, the motion has failed. Therefore, the chair's ruling will stand. Count them again. Rattle it off again, just publicly, if you could.
Okay,
And just in case anyone's curious, if you vote one way and choose to change your vote, you can do so prior to the aggregate vote being taken. So,
okay.
and recorded, excuse me.
I'm reading alphabetically. Bruno, nay. Burkhart, aye. Ruby, aye. Caven, aye. Kilberg, aye. Kostrog, nay. Maladra, nay. Marks, nay. Mayor, nay. Swanson, nay.
6 nay votes, 4 aye votes, the motion does fail. I would invite Mr. Rubin or Mr. Cruz, the 11th. Is that the date that you had originally stated? Hold on. Hold on, folks. Hey, folks. Hold on for a second. Hold on, okay? It's just incredible, isn't it?
It's our livelihood.
It's Geneva's livelihood. It's all of Geneva, not just East. I see those Amazon trucks going down Roosevelt and State Street.
Okay, madam, you're out of order respectfully, but I apologize for having to say that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ooh, that's impressive. So much for heading down south, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, the 11th, but we have issues regarding the 11th. Applicant, you originally recommended the 11th. Do you wish to stick with that date?
Yes, sir.
Council, chime in. Alderman Kilberg, sir.
Ms. Dawkins had indicated at our last meeting that we have a meeting with SPAC on diversity on the 11th.
Correct.
And that could not be changed. Now we have SPAC also being impacted by a decision to delay their meeting for an extension for the petitioner. What's to prevent the petitioner from asking for another extension next week?
Because the chair would not entertain such a request. And the petitioner, I believe, knows that.
I'd like to have the petitioner explain what they intend to do over the next 7 days that they haven't had an opportunity to do over the last 11 days.
I'm gonna... No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm the chair of this meeting, and regardless of what decision I make, if it's wrong or overruled, at least I have the opportunity to speak. So, with that, and I appreciate the consideration being given. I don't know if that's appropriate. What you're asking the petitioner to do is to share with you what they may or may not be thinking, and then depending on what they may or may not say, we then begin a conversation that may or may not be necessary, et cetera. Is that a fair statement, or is that,
Well, the petitioner does, I think,
doesn't have to say anything?
the petitioner doesn't have to say anything at this point.
Right.
Well,
That's just, I mean,
And the alderman can certainly ask, but the petitioner doesn't have to.
yeah, the council members can certainly ask, the petitioner doesn't have to respond. My sense tells me that there's certain things cogitating, but again, I'm not privy to it either. So Alderman Kilberg, the floor is still yours.
I think as a common courtesy, the petitioner should go to the podium and say, I empathize with the public that's turned out this evening. I understand your concerns, and we're trying to address those. I mean, that's a common courtesy. And they don't even have the common courtesy to come to the podium to ask the public to appreciate what they might be trying to do. And that's all I'm going to say.
Mr. Bezos?
Council, while I can't get into specifics, I can tell you, Councilman, that you will not be seeing revisions to plans that would require further public hearings. But we do need time to discuss with our client how we might be able to address what seemed to be the predominant concern of the neighbors. We're not sure we'll be able to, but we'd like to be able to, as well as we know one of the council persons today sent in a lot of questions, and we'd like to discuss with our client how we might address those. So you're not going to hear anything revolutionary, but we would like this time, and we appreciate the chair's ruling on that.
And for the record, it is the council's ruling on that, but thank you. Mr. Kosarek.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like we've made an accommodation for the applicant tonight, but I would ask that in fairness to the community and given the holiday, that the meeting is not rescheduled for next Monday, but for the following Monday after that.
I thought that was upsetting, that it was 2 weeks instead of 1.
Not for me.
Okay. Alderwoman Burghardt.
Thanks. I wanted to just speak in favor of that. You know, it's a half day for Geneva schools on Friday and Monday's off. So for a lot of families, it's a 4-day weekend. I know I'm going to be in Springfield with my family, would plan to come back for the SPAC meeting. But, you know, had we started the discussion tonight, we would have had to continue on Monday. And a lot of these people, I doubt we were going to get done by 10. And a lot of people might have missed because of the holiday. But if tonight we decided we're not starting tonight, then as Alderman Kosberg says, well, if you needed a week, we'll give you 2, because I think it's fair to make sure we have a full house here, and that the families, the people who are here can make plans again to be here on the 18th. Thank you.
The petitioner has no objection to that.
There you go. No objection, ladies and gentlemen. The 18th it is, unless anyone in the council objects or wishes to opine on that matter. Alderwoman Ruby.
I would just like to get like a show of hands from the residents. Is the 18th preferable for everybody? Okay, thank you. Yeah. 2027. Thank you.
On the 18th, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a public hearing on the annexation agreement. And the items which are now called out as items 12B, C, D, and E will be on that agenda. I will assure you that this item will be the first item on the agenda. And I wish to, well, I'll conclude with that. How's that? Now, to the gentleman or lady who texted me about missing their son's birthday, I profoundly apologize.
Yeah, his 9th birthday was tonight.
Okay, I do, text me your address and I'll make certain that I bring a special gift to him. The City of Batavia tableware. And to all of you, thank you very much for your patience. Thank you for your indulgence. Thank you for watching what happens sometimes, which is awkward and uncomfortable. I appreciate it. Public comment, ladies and gentlemen, public comment under city council. We're not adjourning, I'm taking public comment. Any public comment for the benefit of the council and community from anyone joining us?
Just so we got it. Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's recommended that we take a motion to continue items 3D, the public hearing on the annexation agreement, items 12B as in boy, C as in Charlie, D as in David, and E as in Edward, to,
We want all of the, I just want,
just to clarify, so it's for the record that we're continuing to the 18th of,
we want to make sure that for purposes of making sure everybody has noticed that we've got all of the items that are listed below. So the chair is allowing it to be rescheduled. But I want to make sure that there's no question about when it's being continued to. It's being continued to a date certain. All items. All items. Yeah, so the whole thing is going to that date.
Yeah, the whole thing.
I just didn't want to leave, I wanted to make sure there was no confusion in that regard.
public hearing, items 12B, C, D, and E, which will be, of course, renumbered and reallocated on that 18th, but nevertheless, that's what it is. Is there a motion to so, Kossarog, seconded by Marks. All in favor of so doing as stated, please indicate by saying aye.
Bruno, aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, got that for the record. I'll offer again, public comment. Anyone here in the audience who wishes to address the council regarding any matter? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good, yourself? I appreciate all you guys' time. No, it's not fun, but we appreciate everything you guys do. Would we be able to request all the updated documents or any proposed changes that they're requesting or proposing?
Yes, in
by
fact,
due
any-
next Monday? And that will give us as the community time to go through it, as we all have other jobs like you guys do?
Absolutely.
And then-
Once the material is submitted to professional staff, it becomes a public document. Once that document is submitted and then posted online, it'll be accessible to anyone and everyone.
But is there a minimum amount of time? What I'm saying is if we get it next Monday.
Oh, no.
Or,
Traditionally speaking, our agenda packets are posted on a Thursday evening, and that all the material is available.
but that Thursday for the following Monday, right?
Yes, sir.
The only thing I'm trying to ask for is, would it be possible, since they were originally asking for next Monday, to submit all documents by the 11th, by October 11th morning, so that we, as residents, have a week to go through all the documents prior to the 18th? Am I making myself clear? I
Yes, you
apologize
are.
if I'm not.
Again, back to,
No, I understand what you're saying. I just asking, so we have time. I mean, it's a lot of documents, and I'm still learning. I
question,
respect the people in the building industry and everything
all the
else.
documents that we have in place now, it's my understanding, will remain pretty much static. Whatever changes might be made that are immaterial to the annexation agreement, but perhaps to some of the conditions regarding, my assumption is going to be a separate document, and that document is required to be submitted to the city of Geneva no later than Wednesday prior to the Monday meeting, which of course would mean the 13th.
The 13th,
We
okay.
then compile all that material, we make certain it's tabulated accordingly,
Mm-hmm.
and then we broadcast it out, and it becomes available to the public.
Okay,
So that's the standard process. If there's something earlier, my gut tells me that it would be unusual, and here goes again, to, to vary from that process, because that would, I think, open the door to other requests regarding other items that don't normally follow those practices.
okay.
And you're familiar with where to find all this information on?
Oh, yeah, I'm getting used to that with the website, no problem at all. And it'll be just as a separate document, we'll be put in as a fourth, somewhere that is, we're knowing that where it's being put just all the way in the bottom?
No, you will see the agenda item. Again, my pledge to you is that this is the first item. All the documents related thereto will be attached to that packet.
Okay,
And of course, once the Geneva Farms North development is updated in any form or fashion, I'm certain all of you are familiar.
Yep.
You receive either an email alert saying there's been changes made, and those changes then are tabulated within that link.
Okay.
So,
thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Sir,
everyone.
sir, can we get your name?
I'm sorry, Kevin Machano, 558 Lexington Drive.
Kevin O'Connell?
Machano, Mosciano.
Thank you.
thank you. Alderman Kilburn?
The petitioner requested to have an extension of 1 week till next Monday. So apparently, they anticipated having all their information to present to the council or to the city staff by this Wednesday. So I'm saying, as a courtesy and a concession to the public, can we ask that the petitioner have their information to the city staff by the 6th, which is this Wednesday, so that the community can be given the privilege to assimilate and to review the materials that you would have hoped to present next Monday night? And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
I don't believe it's an appropriate motion. The chair would rule the following. If that be the case, and this council feel that's the appropriate thing to do, then where do we go the next time?
Well,
They've also conceded that the 18th is no objection. And this council agreed the 18th would be the better date. If we now state publicly that while the 18th is the date and the 13th is the requirement, we'd like you to update that requirement and advance that requirement by 7 days simply because we could request that for every petitioner, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be a change of tenant use, whether it be amendment to the zoning ordinance, you name it. I think that's a slippery slope, my opinion.
but this is an extension that we've granted. It isn't a normal, typical agenda item that we're talking about. We came tonight prepared to discuss the items that were on the agenda. They asked for an extension, the extension was granted. So I'm just saying that this legal team was prepared to come back with something by this Wednesday for next Wednesday's meeting, or next Monday's meeting. I'm just saying, as a courtesy to the public, to show that it's fair and balanced, that this way they have at least a week then to visit amongst themselves, to review the materials, and to develop a response. If we give this to them on the 13th, then we're going to get called to a meeting, Becky and I, on Saturday, probably to meet with the public to try to explain what's happening. So we have to react and move on short notice, but they get the courtesy of 2 weeks, or almost 2 weeks, to prepare and bring forth their concessions or modifications to what they were proposing. I don't know. I think that's reasonable.
Again, I would just state, for what it's worth, I think it's a slippery slope. I truly do. Alderwoman Ruby?
I would agree, at least by the 11th. I mean, that was the original date they asked for per Mr. Masciano's request. That's logical to me. Technically, yes, I agree with Mr. Kilberg, even by Wednesday, if that's when they should have the materials in, but I'll extend through the weekend. I just ask that our residents get 1 week. So now the petitioner has 2 weeks to prepare for the next meeting. I would like our residents to at least have a 1 week cushion, because they have been scrambling for the past month, trying to make sense of information and reviewing information, the weekend before, when it becomes available. I feel we've already been, I've already said it, I feel like we are treating the developer with an advantage that we did not honor to our residents right now.
Let me also say this, before Peter speaks. The reality is, folks, that simply because a petitioner, whomever that petitioner might be, submits materials to David DeGroot and Chayton True and others, requires both Mr. DeGroot, Mr. True, and others to vet that material prior to its publication, so that, in case there's inconsistencies, incongruities, you name it. What I think I hear you saying is, let the team of DeGroot and True accept and forward without the proper due diligence on their end. And that's what I think concerns me.
No.
Neither one of us said that.
No, I just said that's what I'm inferring.
Okay,
That's what I'm
You
inferring.
should not infer, because we did not say that.
Okay, well, guess what, folks? Peter, floor is yours. I'm telling you, it's a slippery slope, folks.
Sir, could we have your name, please? So, yes, Attorney
on it.
Peter Bezos for the petitioner. The petitioner doesn't wish the council to have to set any precedents. We'll happily submit whatever we're going to submit by the 11th.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Thank you.
That
And,
does not stand for every petitioner here forward. Just be clear, folks.
And that information will then be on our website on the 11th?
It has to be full, I can't speak for David and Chayton.
Okay.
I don't know the nature of what's being submitted, I don't know the breadth and depth of what's being submitted, I don't know the legal expertise of what's being
That's
submitted.
fine. I'll
so-
work it out with staff and the residents. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the
Work it out together.
date.
We'll work it out together, Alderman Ruby, because we simply, it's interesting, but, okay. David and Chayton, here's a question, just for the hell of it. Are you guys scheduled to be in next week? Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay. Any other public comment? It could be on any matter, ladies and gentlemen. Any information from the dais for the benefit of the community? We have someone raising their hand online. Mr. McCready?
We did have one individual raising their hand, however, they've lowered their hand now, so
Okay.
no one from our online guests here this evening raising their hand.
From the dais? Entertain a motion to close, or I should say adjourn, the city council meeting. Is there a motion?
To adjourn.
Motion by Alderman Marks. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Microphones are off. We're going to begin the committee of the whole meeting just momentarily, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, without objection, I call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Kindly let the record show that all the council members are present and Alderman Bruno is joining us remotely. I'll entertain a motion to approve the special committee of the whole minutes from August 30th, 2021. Motion by Alderman Mayor. Seconded by Alderman Marks. Any questions, any comments? All in favor of the approval, or excuse me, the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Bruno, aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Items of business, item 3A, consider draft resolution authorizing execution of a contract with Institutiform Technologies at a cost of $493,477 with an additional $49,347.70 in change orders for a total cost not to exceed $542,824.70 for 2021 sanitary and storm sewer lining project. Whew. Motion by Kasserag. Seconded by Alderwoman Burghardt. Questions or comments for Mr. Van Gescam, who is with us tonight? Seeing none, hearing none, sensing Alderman
I'll
Mayer.
ask one since
Okay.
you sat through all of this. So I went through the plans and I saw where you're going to be doing this lining. How is it that you arrived at the specific locations that you're lining?
Sure. It's done through a process of reviewing the videotapes that we either have done in-house or by other contractors, and that may have been done a year previously in some cases. In other cases, these are areas that maybe have been pushed off for a couple of years. They've been on our priority list, but last year Geneva East area took priority. So we have a list of what we call high priority areas, and that's what we continue to work on as budget is available, funds are available.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Mr. V? We have a motion, we have a second, a voice vote is sufficient. All in favor of item 3A, please indicate by saying aye.
Bruno, aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion will be advanced to the city council meeting for additional consideration. Item 3B is to consider draft resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with Boulder Contractors Incorporated at a cost of $126,900 with an additional $12,690 in change orders for a total cost not to exceed $139,590 for a 2021 sanitary manhole replacement project. Alderman Kasserag makes the motion. Ooh. Alderwoman Burghardt gets the second. Questions or comments for Mr. Van Gescam?
I was wondering about this. So we say Just looking at the wording here. Manhole replacement. So I don't know, I think of just the cover, but we're actually talking about the whole,
Yeah,
like digging up all the concrete, the whole probably steel structure underneath that.
right. These are, 100-year-old manholes, for the most part, and they're brick, actually. They're amazingly, they're constructed amazingly well, back then. So the problems with these is that the floor, which is in some cases 13, 14 feet deep, it used to be a concrete floor. There's no floor anymore, so it's just soil that's down there. The bricks on the bottom sections are gone, completely gone. So we're not able to line it or, do something like that instead of, unfortunately having to dig it up and replace it. These manholes are 4 feet in diameter, so it'll end up being a fairly large, excavation area, only mainly to put shoring in for safety. But the construction of it, I've done plenty of these myself, and it should only take a couple of days for each structure, and then they'll be out of there, and then the pavement will be restored. But it shouldn't be too bad, but it definitely needs to be done.
So it includes the floor and everything.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Mayor.
A couple of these are in the middle of State Street.
So, yeah, one at the intersection of 3rd Street and State Street. One is in the north lane of the westbound traffic. The other one is in the south lane of the eastbound traffic. So we'll do one at a time, as not to cause too much of a problem in that area. At Grant, it is in the eastbound lane in the center area, of those. So unfortunately, it's going to disrupt traffic for a couple of days each, but definitely better than an emergency repair.
Well, there's hardly any traffic there anyway, so shouldn't be a problem. Anyone else? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of item 3B as in boy, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes and will be advanced to the council for additional consideration. Item 3C, consider draft resolution declaring 3 substation transformers as surplus property. Kosarog makes the motion, Marks makes the second. Questions or comments for Mr. Babica? Or is it Mr. Landers? Mr. Babica, that's what I thought. Any questions or comments for the Big Rich? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Bruno, aye.
Anyone opposed? This item will be advanced to the City Council unanimously for additional consideration. Item 3D, consider draft resolution authorizing execution of a contract with Siebert Landscaping in the amount of $208,256 for the 2022 citywide landscape maintenance services. So moved. Alderman Marks makes the motion. Second. Alderman Mayor makes the second. Questions or comments from Mr. Landers? Anything at all? Hearing none, sensing none. All in favor of item 3D, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Bruno, aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion's been advanced unanimously to the City Council for additional consideration. Item 3E, consider draft resolution authorizing an award to extend a snow removal contract with Accurate Edge Landscaping for the 2021 and 2022 snow season, requiring all snow be dumped in St. Charles. Is there a motion? Motion by Alderman Mayor, let that record show. Seconded by Alderwoman Burkhart. Questions or comments from Mr. Landers?
I do.
Yes, Alderman Mayor.
With the commuter lot being as it is, which is very underutilized. Have we considered for 21 closing down portions and not shoveling?
We did consider this actually last year and chose to continue to move forward due to concerns with liability if somebody were to park in that area that was not, snow wasn't removed, and potential slip and fall, those kind of things. So we chose to move forward with it last year.
Would it be a savings if we did close down a portion of the lot?
They bill on an hourly basis, so if it was, a couple of minutes, you might see a few pennies, but otherwise,
Probably just do it all.
do it all.
Okay.
Anyone else? We have a motion and a second, folks, on item 3E. All in favor of approving that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Bruno, I.
Anyone opposed? Item 3E will be advanced to the council unanimously for additional consideration. New business from the council. And Mr. McCready, anyone online wishing to provide public comment?
No one raising their hand online.
Okay. From the dais or from Mr. Bruno's home? Anything? Motion to adjourn. Oh, Mr. Babica. What the heck?
Unusual, but I just got a text from a resident that said the live feed is off.
The live feed is off, according,
No, it's not.
okay.
Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, sir. Motion to adjourn would be in order. Alderman Swanson makes that motion. Voice vote is sufficient to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Bruno, I.
Thank you, everyone.